Bright day everyone, my name is Brian Tinga and today we will discuss about cultural integrity. But before that, we will discuss first our learning objectives. Number one, to preserve cultural heritage by protecting and promoting tradition, customs, and practices unique to various communities. Number two, to promote cultural awareness by educating individuals and communities about the significance of cultural diversity. Number three, to strengthen community identity by empowering local communities to celebrate and sustain their cultural heritage. 29. Protection of indigenous culture, traditions, and institutions. The state should respect, recognize, protect the right of ICCS, IPS to preserve and protect their culture, traditions, and institutions. It shall consider these rights in the formulation and application of national plans and policies. Section 29 emphasizes the state's commitment to respecting and protecting the cultural integrity of indigenous cultural communities and indigenous people. First, we have the cultural preservation. This section stresses the importance of safeguarding the unique cultural heritage of indigenous cultural communities and indigenous people. This means their languages, rituals, art, and oral traditions should be preserved as living parts of their identity. Cultural preservation ensures these traditions are passed down to future generations, preventing them from being overshadowed by globalization or modern influence. And we have the recognition of rights. The law explicitly acknowledges that ICCS or IPS have inherent rights to practice their culture freely and maintain their traditional institutions. This includes their methods of self-governance, land use systems, and justice mechanism. By incorporating these rights into state laws and practices, the government aims to validate their importance and national identity. We have the protection from exploitation. Indigenous cultures are often at risk of being misused or commodified for profit. Section 29 addresses this by emphasizing the protection of these communities from cultural exploitation, whether through unauthorized use of their symbols, traditions, or intellectual property. This helps maintain the dignity and authenticity of their heritage. We have the integration, not assimilation. This section highlights the goal is to integrate indigenous perspective into the broader societal framework while allowing them to retain their cultural uniqueness. Unlike assimilation, which erases different, integration encourages mutual respect and coexistence. National plans and policies should consider indigenous values, ensuring that development aligns with the way of life rather than disrupting it.
Bright morning, Miss. I am Honey P. Parpa, and my topic is all about educational system. Educational systems. The state shall provide equal access to various cultural opportunities to the ICCS or IPS through the educational system. Public or private cultural entities, scholarships, grants, and other incentives without prejudice to the right to establish and control their educational systems and institutions by providing education in their own language, in a manner appropriate to their cultural methods of teaching and learning. Indigenous children and youth shall have the right to all levels and forms of education of the state. So, the educational system refers to the complex networks of institutions, policies, and processes that provide educational service to students, so that the government must ensure indigenous children and youth to have equal chances to learn about their culture, language, and traditions through educational system like schools and universities, cultural institutions like museums and libraries, and other initiatives like a mentorship program and cultural exchange. By implementing this provision, governments can promote inclusive, equitable, and culturally responsive education for indigenous children and youth.
Section 31. Recognition of cultural diversity. The state shall endeavor to have the dignity diversity of the cultures, tradition, histories, and aspirants of the ICCS and IPS, or fortunately, reflected in the information and cultural educational exchange. Consequently, the state shall take effective measures in consulting with ICCS then and IPS, and discrimination and to promote tolerance, understanding, and good relation among ICS. The explanation is what is Section 31 is emphasize the state's recognition of cultural diversity and its commitment to promoting and the respect, equality, and dignity. Among cultural groups, it aims to preserve cultural then our heritage.
Furthermore, the government should take effective measures to ensure that state-owned media duly reflective indigenous cultural diversity. The state shall likewise ensure that participation of appropriation indigenous leaders in schools, communities, and international cooperative undertaking like festival, conferences, seminars, and workshops to promote and enhance their distinctive heritage and values. So the government is making effort to ensure that indigenous culture are respected and represented. So first, state-owned media should show indigenous traditions and values to reflect their cultural diversity. And second, indigenous leaders should be involved in school and communities to share their knowledge and experiences. And finally, they should be also included international activities like festivals, conferences and workshops to promote and preserve their unique heritage. So the goal is to celebrate their culture and ensure it continue to be valued by everyone.
I am Aris Perleno, Group 4. The topic of our group is Chapter by Culture Integrity, and I am discussing Section 32, Community Intellectual Right. CCCS or RPS have the right to practice and revitalize their own cultural traditions and customs. The state shall present, protect, and develop the past, present, and future manifestation of their cultures, as well as the right to the restitution of cultural, intellectual, religious, and spiritual property, taken without their free and prior informed consent of in violation of their laws, traditions, and customs.
Section 33 Rights to religious cultural sites and ceremonies. CCS or IPS shall have the right to manifest, practice, develop, and teach their spiritual and religious traditions, costumes, and phenomena. The right to maintain, protect, and have access to the religious and cultural sites. The right to use and control of ceremonial objects, and the right to the repatriation of human remains.
Accordingly, the state shall take effective measures and cooperate with the ICCS, IPS, concerned to ensure that indigenous sacred places, including burial sites, be preserved, respected, and protected. To achieve this purpose, it shall be unlawful to explore, excavate, or make diggings on archaeological, geological sites of the ICCS, PS for the purpose of obligating materials of culture, values without the free and prior informed consent of the community concerned, and deface, remove, or otherwise destroy artifacts which of great importance to the ICGS, IPS for the preservation of their culture benefit. Outlines the obligation of states protect indigenous cultural heritage sites, particularly sacred places and burial grounds, in cooperation with indigenous cultural communities, ICCS, or indigenous people, IPS. The goal to respect and preserve indigenous cultural heritage, recognizing the importance of these sites to the ICCS, IPS, cultural identity, and a central tradition. The text likely organizations from legislation or policy related to indigenous rights.
Section 34 outlines the rights of indigenous cultures, communities, ICCS, or indigenous peoples. IPS regarding the recognition, control, and protection of their culture and intellectual property. These communities have the right to safeguard and develop their own science, technology, and culture practice. The section emphasizes that ICCS, IPS are entitled to ownership and control, protection of cultural heritage, natural resource and traditional knowledge, oral traditionals and arts. First, ownership and control. Full ownership and control over their intellectual and cultural rights, including all associated practice and resource. Number 2, protection of cultural heritage. The right to special measures that ensure the protection of their culture, manifestation, and intellectual knowledge. Number 3, nature, resource, and traditional knowledge. Specific reference to the protection of resources like genetic materials, seeds, tradition, medicines, medicinal plants, animals, and minerals, as well as the knowledge about their properties. Oral traditionals and arts. This also include the preservation of oral tradition, literature, design, and visual and performing arts. In essence, the section advocates for the autonomy of indigenous peoples over their culture and intellectual resource, allowing them to protect, develop, and control their traditional knowledge and practice, ensuring they are not exploited without their consent or outside of their control. Thank you.
Section 35. Access to biological and genetic resources. Access to biological and genetic resources and to indigenous knowledge related to the conservation, utilization, and enhancement of these resources shall be allowed within ancestral lands on domains of the ICCS or IPS only with a free and prior informed consent of such communities obtained in accordance with customary laws of the concerned community.
I'm Bea. I shall be starting. My topic for today is SEC 36 Sustainable Agro-Technical Development. What is Sustainable Agro-Technical Development? This is the state shall recognize the rights of ICCS or IPs to a sustainable agro-technological development and shall formulated and implement programs of action for its effective implementation. The state shall likewise promote the good genetic and resource management systems among the ICCS or IPs, shall encourage cooperation among government agencies to ensure the successful, sustainable development of ICOMM-IPS. For my further explanation, ICSS or IPS stands for Indigenous Cultural Communities or Indigenous Peoples. The terms refer to the group of people who share a common language, customs, tradition, and other cultural traits. They may also be people who are descended from the population that inhabited the country at the same time of colonization.
The Section 37 funds for archaeological and historical sites, the ICCS and IPS shall have the right to receive from the national government all funds especially earmarked or allocated for the management and preservation of their archaeological and historical sites and artifacts with the financial and technical support for the national government agency. So Section 37 ensures that Indigenous Cultural Communities, ICCS, and Indigenous Peoples, IPS, receive funds from the national government especially allocated for preserving their archaeological and historical sites and artifacts. It recognizes their rights to manage these cultural resources while benefiting from financial and technical support provided by national government agencies. This provision safeguards the heritage of ICCS and IPS and promotes collaboration to ensure proper preservation and management.